All right. So, and I think just the same thing, like I was saying right before I push record, there is plenty of conversations, in my opinion, about deliverance. There's just not enough conversations about staying delivered. And it's the same thing in the wellness world. There's enough conversations about how to lose weight, but there's not enough conversations how to stay with the weight loss. And so it kind of goes hand in hand. And so because once people reach a goal, they just think that's it. And then they're shocked that they can't stay there. And so going forward, until the Lord reveals to BB what these conversations are going to be called. These conversations are going to be called table talks, because we're doing this on Zoom. And maybe it'll be more beneficial. I don't know. But we like to get more personal on Friday nights right now until I can find a space, or a space that allows Daniel and unlimited time. It's just my house for right now. Until there's an opportunity to use a building that someone will allow us to use. But I know not many people are comfortable with going to people's houses either, so I get it. So that's why it's kind of been the same people. So to me, I feel like the Lord is pulling more conversations, because there's too many 1 minute moments and not effective conversations. So I don't think people have enough material to fight back when you only are given a snack. So they're not a lot of people are not fed enough to last longer in their fights, if that makes sense, because they're just eating a whole bunch of snacks. First of all, that was good. That was good. Okay, all right.
M&M snacks.
M&M snacks, and no one's eating a meal. So BB is overall going to be running this. For right now, it's called Table Talk, and she's responsible for the location, time, which we are aiming for every other Friday, around
Every other Friday
around 8 o'clock. And she's responsible for the topic. So the Lord gave her this topic, and I was like, okay, look at BB with the ears. Let those that have ears, let them hear. I was like, okay. So I know there's gonna be a lot of people, couple people are running late, but BB, go ahead, take over the show.
Well, I think what I want
to introduce yourself.
Oh,
what do you do?
So, well, you did. My name is BB. Like Sanaida said, I think that we need a lot more talk about mental health issues in the Latino community, which I know firsthand we lack. From personal experience within my family and my surroundings, my jobs, and the career that I've chosen, I see it firsthand. And I think that it's important for us to address these issues, because I think that as we move forward, if these issues are not addressed, we're going to see more and more what we're seeing, but to like a higher degree. So I think that it's important for us to be able to try to make this like normal. It's just like, hey, what's your favorite color? I think that it's important for us to be able to talk about this and to be super comfortable, and not to be judged. Because I think that's the number one thing people fear.
To be judged, or be part of the trend that is pushing to normalize this behavior, like, oh no, that's normal, and then there's not enough believing that it is possible to be free.
So the topic that I was delivered was healing our little ones inside. And it's just, how are we doing with that? Like, I personally, totally transparent, I'm still in therapy. I go to therapy once a week. If I could, I would probably do it more. But I've noticed that, the stuff that triggers me or has triggered me, I didn't relate it, or I couldn't make the connection to, to, how do they say it? Like, to my inner child, let's say. So have I forgiven that person? Have I, made peace with them? And apparently I haven't. So there's stuff that still comes up. And, as I process it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But as we go along every day, you don't think of your inner child, like, oh, that triggered that little, person over there. No, we just keep moving and we try to deal with it. But if we go back and we think enough, we're going to make the connection. And that's key, because when you do that, you have to pause, think, and then, act or react, let's say. Because in my case, let's say, whatever it was that triggered me, like I personally, I was in it, I was living it. I was like, okay, you need to take a step back, figure this out, and how can you best handle this situation? But that's obviously not always the case. And then obviously after the situation happens, I sit back, I evaluate, and I'm like, how could I have handled that differently? And I'll share something very personal, like, maybe last year, my daughters during February school vacation were supposed to, obviously they were home, and I was trying to get them out of the house just so they're not here. And I looked for February vacation camps. I had everything set up, and I didn't have the assistance or the support to get them there. Neither did I have the financial support to pay for it. I figured it out. I figured out the financial part, and I figured out how to get them there. But the feeling that caused lingered for months, and I didn't know, and I was aware. And I was like, why is this affecting me so much? Why am I so mad 4 months later? And I couldn't figure it out. And then when I finally was able to talk about it, and like, I was like, oh, I get it. And once I made the connection, I was free. Once it was that instant, it was just like that. But it took me a while. It took me months. And I was like living miserably. And I'm like, why am I this mad? Why am I like, why did I go from 0 to 1,000 so fast? And I stayed at 1,000 for so long. And I was mad at myself for not figuring it out sooner. I was mad at myself for not understanding why. But when I finally did, it just went away. And the way that it did go away was by talking about it to the person that caused the emotion. And for me, that was very liberating, because I don't think that I've ever experienced that. But obviously it was abandonment issues, issues of, of being neglectful. And then obviously my own expectations of what I expected from that person, or what I expected them to do. So, like I said, I think that the most valuable, I can still remember the drive when we were talking about it. I can still remember how like my heart felt when I released it. But I didn't know that little child in me was still affected, because what triggered it, like, it was my dad. It was my relationship with my dad. It was not having a relationship with my dad, because my dad didn't live here. My dad lived in a different country when I was growing up. So he was absent. He was always absent, because the excuse was, which was validated, he's not here. He doesn't live here. So it's okay for him to miss graduation. It's okay for him to miss everything. But then when he came back into the country and he had the opportunity to go to graduations and be involved, he wasn't. So I thought that inner child in me with the abandonment issues with my dad were all taken care of. I thought I was healed. I was like, I'm at peace with him. And that wasn't the case. And I am 42 years old. So that was hard. But obviously it was also a great lesson, just because I wouldn't have never known. I would have, gone about my day and thinking, or my ways, and say, no, that's healed. I'm over that. He's passed. But what I also learned is that I don't feel like we ever stop healing. I don't think that it gets just abandoned and it's gone. I think that as we continue to work on it, we continue to process it, we get closer and closer to where we really want to be. But I don't know that it ever goes away. I might be wrong. What do you guys
BB,
experiencing.
so I was sharing with someone earlier,
Mhm.
who is not as empathetic. So our viewpoints are very, very different how we see and communicate things, which is fine. But when I was sharing the conversation that we were going to have, the topic of today's like healing the inner child, um, she wanted a further explanation. I clearly understand what that is. What would you say to
Mhm.
someone that who is that inner child if you're 42 years old?
So I believe it's coming to peace with that, going back to that age. Because what I learned is that the way you deal with it now at 42 is the same way my 8-year-old self dealt with it. It's the same way my 12-year-old self dealt with it. So when stuff triggers you, and that's all you know because you're triggered back to being 12, that's how you process it. You're stuck in a 42-year-old body, but your mind and that trigger is 12 years old still. So I learned that that's why it's important to deal with that. That's why it's important to grow or make that 12-year-old child grow by doing the steps, by doing the self work, by working on yourself, and every day kind of feeding that little child as they obviously, it's going to take them time to catch up to my 42 years old, but eventually the goal is to be there. But obviously it's those triggers that take you back to that age, which we could only, what was our skills at 12?
Yeah, because
We had
I
none.
was saying like when things come up, our belief system, how we view things, how we view life, how we carry traditions is because of those years. And I think, I don't know about for the rest of y'all, but I feel lied to. So anytime something comes up, there's a conflict. And the conflict is I feel lied to. So to me, that inner child just reminds me of how I was raised. And so even if you guys read my post, I feel like like I just feel lied to. And it's not so much I feel lied to as far as my belief system or outgrowing it. I just feel lied to as that's what you say, but that's not what you did. And you're not carrying that. So if you believe, okay, baby, I'll like for example, I had two camps, and each camp was supposed to represent giving back to the community by serving the community by providing a gym, which I do here in Boston. And there was one in my own hometown, which that was honestly my most prideful one. That was the one that I loved the most because that's where I grew up here. I didn't grow up in Boston. There is no childhood memories here. There is no like it's just to me giving back to a bunch of strangers. So Camp Desiderio meant something to me the most. And so when it got destroyed by my own family, I'm like, wait, I thought we should always help people. Isn't that I was told? So that's why I think that's an example of being lied to, because it's like you always said that we should help people. You always said that we should give back. Is this not it? So there's this revelation of like what you're saying and what you're doing is two different things. And obviously we can give examples like, well, remember this and remember that, remember this. And yes, but the one that made an impact to me is the one I gave my heart to. So me getting a degree, maybe I'm helping the community, but that's not how I see it. Me, let's say I give $1,000 somewhere and I give back to community, maybe, but that's not where my heart's at. My heart was in my purpose, and I pour my heart in my purpose. And so me trying to expand my purpose into my hometown, and that got shut down. That's what meant the most to me. Does that make sense? Can anyone relate to that part or no?
Yes, but what part of your inner child, the way you dealt with it, was affected?
Feel
Can you
light to
pinpoint
yes, I feel like
what
I
age? I'm just trying to, what
oh my
age?
whole life.
Okay.
I think in cultural, like I'm Mexican. I don't look like it, but I am. So
Far from it. Far.
I think as our culture, it's always been, we've seen people, we put people in our homes when they come from Mexico, and we help, get back on their feet. We see in their whole lives. Um,
Mhm.
right, Bay? Like you guys seen and help families, and so it's always been like, okay, this is what we do. We help people out until they get back on their feet, and so, but just because I saw it doesn't mean my heart was in it. So when my heart was in something, that's what was broken. Like if someone says, "Oh, go do this," I'm going to do it because you told me to, and I said yes. But when I make the initial move to do something because this is where my heart came from and this is how it's handled, that was very eye-opening to me. Like, wait, this has nothing to do with giving back. This has everything to do with you. This has
Mhm.
everything to do with how this makes look, how you helping people made you look like. You look like the good guy. You look like the hero because this gym has nothing to do with you. It's not really about serving back the community or really helping people or giving back. It had everything to do with helping those people made you look good. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it.
And so that revelation made me go, so have I been lied to my whole life? And so that was the big, and so seeing things, how people's intentions have been exposed to me lately, makes me want to go, I need to check my intentions at all times because I feel like all this was all about you and not really about helping them. Yes, it did benefit them and it did help them, but you really taught us that helping them was really about us, and then we somehow became people pleasers and we don't know why we became people pleasers.
Mhm.
Sorry, I have my 7-year-old here, coming around. So if you see me, it's not that. Um, yes, there was a point in my life that I had to step down. I was in charge of a lot of things, and that's where I found myself. I did a lot of things just because that was the right thing to do, but also because I liked how I felt about it. So when you find yourself in a place that you're like, okay, why am I doing this for real? You go back biblically, you know that whatever God has placed for you to do is because He placed it, not because it's yours. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes we have to go back and really remind ourselves that we're just broken. And it's funny that, and this is why I'm here, healing my inner child, because this is exactly what I've been doing on Thursdays. My class, the Bible class, it has been all about the power of your words. And healing my inner child was probably like 3 weeks ago. And it is crazy to know that there's a lot of people that have been sitting in our churches that have that same mentality. And I'm like, no, just if you understood that you're just, again, either pleasing or you're doing this because, again, it makes you feel like you're complete. But in reality, is that there's a need that was never met. And when you go back to that, and I was telling, and I'm raw. Like I am when I talk to my people, I'm like, listen, I'm not here. Like I honestly, still to this day, when they say pastor, I'm like, I cringe. Why? Because again, my history and everything. I'm like, okay, it's just for me that, and again, this can be a totally different table talk, but when you understand that you are there for the only purpose of walking in a way that people say, wait, there's something different about you. Yes, you're a pastor, but you are not talking about, okay, let's talk about theology, because I always tell them, I'm like, how can I sit here and teach you theology? How can I sit here and talk about algebra if you guys don't even know how to add and subtract? So let's go back to that. So when we go back to what is it that we needed that we never got, then you can actually find yourself in the light of the scripture, Because again, that's another thing. People don't read the Bible. So they come here, and it's like I always say, I'm like, don't think that I'm going to save you. Don't think that by coming here every Sunday or 7 days a week, that's going to make a difference. It is what you find out about yourself by exposing yourself in those areas and by thinking about, okay, what was it that hurt me so much that I am like this? And for me, again, I am the way I am because of my history. But I had to go back and say, okay, why am I doing this? I mean, we can't fool God. So again, it's stepping down and taking that mask off and saying, okay, what is it? And when you go back to your own history and your own past, and again, abuse was one of the most, again, I think 2, 3 days ago, I had a conversation with someone that she brought up that she was abused by someone that we know. And I'm like, wow, I've never knew. But again, she is asking me, she's like, how am I going to talk to people and tell them what happened when he is almost dying and everyone sees him like he's the hero? And I'm like, well, then my advice to you is to dig in and go back to where your heart got all, in stone. Because again, if you go back to that, that's why your whole life has been messed up, because you were never able to heal the right way. And that inner child, and when she was so little, like again, you know how much that has impacted her life. I could see it because in the field that I'm at, I can see things and I'm like, okay, but it is so hard to see things in ourselves. And I think that when you are, like you were saying, you're triggered with things that you're like, wait, why does this bother me? Why am I 2 months in and I'm still feeling this way? Why am I still in this, place and I don't go further? Why? Because there's things that even we don't even understand that we're there. There's things that she talks about all the time. She's like, okay, I didn't even know that this was here, but it is. Our subconscious is there. And there's so much that I think that we get triggered daily with things and we don't know, we don't understand. That's why our bad mood comes. But when she was talking about that, it triggered me too, because I'm like, wow, there are still areas that I need to heal. And it's not until you're actually in front of that mirror, which is someone else, it's always someone else, then you're like, okay, I need time. I need to go back. And I'm like, okay, that's a reaction that I wasn't expecting. And I'm very in control of my reactions. So when you know that there's something that really caught your attention and you're like, okay, my frontal my executive functioning skills weren't working, then you're like, wow, I still need working. But yeah, I think that we are all like, it's all about us. It has never been about anybody else.
Yeah, so it's a good point that you said, like, just recently we went to Mexico in February, and this conversation came out of nowhere, and I was like, and I was trying to hide my tears, and she caught me, nosy. And then like I was like, and then she said something, and I was like, and she was like, obviously you need to confront it. And and we were talking about the mother's womb. And I was like, I knew why I didn't want to confront it. It's just like, um, so I don't know if any of you have ever dislocated a bone, but dislocating the bone, when I dislocated it, it didn't hurt after I dislocated it. It hurt putting it back together. And I knew, like, leaving it alone, I was fine with leaving it alone. I didn't want to, like, put it back together because I knew how much pain I was going to be in. And Lord and behold, man, that thing kicked my butt. It's still kicking my butt. But I understood, and if anyone's listening, this is why we have to confront the past. And a lot of people, especially us older generation, and especially from a Spanish background, and to this day I still hear it. You still talking about that? Are you still bringing it up? If you're still talking about it, it's because you're refusing to confront it. But if you're just talking about it, maybe because you like the attention that comes with it. But if you're not talking about it to do something with it, then you just like the attention that comes with it. But if you're bringing it up to confront, to find an answer, the Bible says, seek and you shall find. Trust me, you will get your answer. You're not going to like it, but you will get your answer. And so when I was like, man, why are you like, okay, I said, you know what? I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to put in the work. But like, can I just ask a question? Why is this necessary? And so he gave me a revelation, and he says, because you're around hurtful people a lot. You hurtful people come to you a lot, and hurt people hurt people. And if you don't cover up your wounds, the hurtful people that are looking for help will sometimes, and sometimes they don't realize they're doing it, put salt on your wounds if you don't allow those scars, those wounds to become scars. And you won't be able to handle, and you will constantly react instead of respond, because an open wound, and you put salt in it, you're going to react. But if you put salt in me now, I'm only going to respond because I'm like, oh, okay, did you not need that salt? So, but if I have an open wound and you put salt on me, you're going to get a reaction out of me, and we may fall apart. But because you are able to find an open wound, and I'm in the field of helping people. So if you're in the field of helping people, it is important that you close up all your wounds, so when they come to you and they offload on you, you're not being hit as hard. And when I saw that revelation, I was like, well, since you put it like that. So
Well, I think it also, in the Latino community, I just feel like we don't name things for what they are. Anything and everything is, oh, pobrecito, oh, his mom passed away when he was a child, or vice versa. It could be, female. Oh, that's because he had a nervous breakdown. A nervous breakdown in the Latino community means you need mental help. You need mental health help. Like, that's what it means. But that's not, they will never call it that. Or they call it a seizure. They call it a seizure because, the behavior. But no, I think the Latino community and, in general, we don't name things for what they are. In my case, like, I have an uncle who has a mental illness. What's his mental illness? His mom died when he was 13. He was raised by his siblings. His, dad got remarried and didn't take him along, so his siblings raised them. So I was like, oh, so so the motherly figure was missing. I was like, okay. So obviously growing up, that's why I knew that my uncle was different, because of those reasons. As I continue to grow and as I continue to, live and learn, I remember I sit down with him and he's an open book. He will tell you anything and everything. And I ask him, I'm like, Theo, have you ever done drugs? Yes. Theo, what kind of drugs? Have you done this? Yes. Have you done that? Yes. Have you done that one? No, I don't think so. Do you hear voices? Yeah, sometimes. Why did you do this? You remember? Oh, because the voices told me to do that, to paint. He used to paint the light bulbs. Like, in high school, like, my mom used to get called. He's over here painting light bulbs in the hallway. They everywhere. That was like a thing of his. And he used to always take things apart to try to put them back together. Well, that's because that's because he needs to keep his mind distracted because mom, my grandma passed away when he was 13, and he's been raised by one sister, then the other sister sent them off to the other sister, but it was never named till this day. I don't think it's ever been named. Right now he's a grown man and he refuses to ever go to the doctors. The doctors are his enemy. But like I remember having this conversation with my mom. I'm like, Mom, he's just mentally ill. Like that's it. Like that's it. He's just obviously like there's different grades of it, there's different levels of it. There's people that are aggressive. He's not. He's just mentally ill, chill. He drinks every day and that's how he self-medicates. But the fact that growing up, that's all you heard. So obviously, what do I say? Oh, he's like that because my grandma passed away when he was younger. No, but that's not true because we never call things by what they are. And that's a problem in the Latino community because if you don't like recognize it, accept it, name it, you won't get it the help it needs. And it is, it's that simple.
And it's crazy that you mentioned that because again, can I share my screen? 2 seconds. I don't know if I can.
I don't know how to give you permission. I just barely learned how to sign on. Let me see. Multiple can share. Okay, here we go. Do you have permission?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Give me 1 second.
Monique, I see that, Monique. I see that.
Do you see this?
It says okay, yes.
Okay.
Oh, it's in Espanol.
Yeah, I just wanna share something. Let me see if I can. How do you? There we go. So this is what I was telling you that I was doing, but this is what I want you guys to look at. Let's see if it allows me to do the next one. So this is what I shared with that class. And maybe you guys know the answer. Hey, let's see. So what age do you think these brains have? Like, what's that one and what's this one? Like, is there an age difference?
I'm muted when we are talking.
Yeah.
Well, obviously one is more developed than the other one, but I believe that the spaces and the trauma is still it still reflects.
I would say the one on the right is older than the one on the left.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys know that these two brains are actually the same age?
These two?
But the smaller had traumas when they were little. And that's what you're talking about. That we as a Latino community, we're like, oh yeah, it's normal. No, it's not. It's even when we go back to, again, that's why I love visuals because it tells you that there is something wrong. And when we can understand that, again, there's so many things, sorry, let me see if I can, all right. So there's so many things that as Latinos, we took in and we're like, okay, that's fine. He's fine. Like he's always drunk because that's just the way it is. But again, if we go back to what happened to him when he was little, and I have heard so many stories about that and people that, even pastors that do things that are not supposed to. And when I had confronted that person, you go back to his history, he was abused, that never was taken care of again. And it's just a pattern. And his brain is still figuring out why. And there's so many other things that you can attach to that, like drugs and many other things. But it is an eye opener when you look at that and you're like, wow, these are two the same age, and there's definitely a big difference.
Do you know if there's a study that when someone starts finding their healing and confronts their past, does their brain start transforming to a healing
So that was my next step, because I was also thinking about that. I'm like, man, there has to be a way of and obviously I'm not there yet because
what? I actually prior back in 2019, they actually took a brain scan. I'm gonna ask if they can do an update because that was in 2019. They did take a brain scan because they wanted to see what was up, and they did find stuff. They said we found things, but we don't know what it means. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm curious to know what the 2023 brain looks like. I probably could make it happen, but I do have that answer actually. I just have to get the 2023 scan. But I told BB though that we're only gonna be here for a half hour because we're past our bedtime. However, I wanted Mo, if you're willing to share what the revelation the Lord showed you. So I just want to update what she's talking about because I don't want her to leave out this important part about foundation. And we can be doing the Lord's work and build it on the wrong foundation and still fall apart. Doing the Lord's work. And so Monique had like a mini breakdown about 3 weeks ago, and it came out of nowhere. Like, and so when the Lord showed her this revelation, I thought that was fascinating. But she had to go back and face the why and rebuild her foundation. And Mo, I know I said, are you willing? But are you willing to share what the Lord showed you? Or do you want me to do it for
You
you?
can just go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So Mo does a lot. She's a teacher. She's a power lifter. She trains. She's the youth person. She's the person that runs the young adult ministry, and she feels like she has a lot on her plate. Now we have had the conversations about planning, time management, and everything like that. From someone that has a lot on their plate, I have done time management very, very well in order to do everything. But I also have the desire to make sure everything's done by managing well. I have also understood before I stepped into this assignment how I had a lack of time management and I wanted to do everything and I was exhausted. What the Lord showed Monique was that because she was an only child and because she heard her majority of her life that you must be a spoiled kid as an only child, she said that she made up her mind that she's going to say yes to everything before anyone else ever makes that comment to her. So no one else looks at her and go, oh, I didn't know you were an only child. So she was going to beat people by over volunteering herself. But it was the intention so that those comments did not come. So though I truly believe that everything she's doing is because the Lord told her, her foundation for why she said yes in the first place was not to God, it was to people. So the foundation of her yes was to people, and then here comes this assignments and she can't carry it because she said yes to the wrong group and not to God. So when the Lord showed her that, she was like, I need to change my yes because those assignments ain't going away. In fact, she got another assignment that she this is Pastor Mo in the house. This is Pastor Mo on the Zoom call right now. So, but I thought that was why you go away? I thought that was fascinating. I was like, wow, like, and it showed me like, yeah, I always say that your yes is needed, but your yes is needed. And I tell folks all the time, this is, you can ask Neptune, you can ask Mo. Your yes is not towards me. Your yes is God. So, and so when she shared that, it goes back to what you were saying, BB. Like, we do need to heal that inner child because as we get older, we're going to start falling apart if we don't visit her or him. With Mo. So since that conversation with that revelation, and I mean, you've been on fire now, but not for nothing. 3 weeks ago, I was concerned. I was like, so can you share like how's it feel now? Because we haven't talked about that part.
Sure. I'm outside, so apologies if it's loud because I live in the hood. But um, I think for me, it's just like, you know, when you're like harboring onto something and it's like it's just and you're holding on to it, but really like it's crushing you. And so in God giving me that revelation, I feel like a weight was lifted. And like obviously like nothing's overnight, right? And so obviously like I have, you know, I need to like think through like my people pleasing ways and like why do I say yes to things? Why do I overcommit? But yeah, like I agree with what you said earlier, coach, of like I genuinely believe that like 95% of the things I say yes to is because God tells me to do it. Um, but like I want to be more mindful of like the heart posture behind it. And that the heart posture is I'm doing it because God said I'm doing it versus I'm doing it so people don't see me in a certain light.
And that's
I
hard.
think,
That's hard.
yeah.
Go ahead, baby.
And I think with this also, we forget the mental load. The mental load that comes with everything we sign up for, remembering this, remembering that, being there for this, being there for that, sending that email, making that phone call, posting this, posting that, taking this down. The mental load, you're just like a walking zombie full of stuff. But like, where's the self-care? Like, where is like off after all of that is after you did your to-do list, you've already added another 10 things on the other end. So the mental load sometimes is so much more draining, you know, than the physical stuff you actually have to do. At least that's my case, you know. So as a single mother too, I'm like, I need a new brain, I need a new assistant, I need like I need an army because I can't, it's so draining doing it all by yourself. The mental load of just remembering everything, it's a lot, but you are expected to do it. That's what it is. It comes with a price. And, you know, and I think that as you sometimes like I
You
talk
said
to
you're expected to do what?
everything I'm doing because these kids didn't bring themselves into this world.
Oh, you mean
Brought them
from
in.
your society, from the society?
Society,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, from the social aspect, like, oh, no, this is what it is. But and what I've seen a lot, like even talking to my mom, if I'll go vent, sometimes she'll be like, you have it better than I did. And what I tell her is, you're right, but still, it still doesn't make it right. It's still, I have it better than you did, correct? Because you came to this country, you were alone, you had no family, and you were a single mother of 3, and you had nothing. I have you, I have my sister. Okay, I have that. I said, but it still doesn't make it right because after the mental load, um, you know, and after the physical drainage, and after everything, then I'm still supposed to like, you know, be effective at school, let's say, effective for the kids, not talk back to them in a nasty way, you know, and be a good friend, be a good, you know, mother, sister, you name it. But, you know, like like, who takes care of this? Who, you know, where's this? You know? So if society expects me to do all of that and I'm trying to put all of that on my plate, then where am I going to go vent? Where am I going to go release all of this without being seen as weak for going to seek help or being seen as, oh, why are you so overwhelmed? Why can't you handle this? So, you know, you guys, society, you guys put the stress on us, put the expectations on us, but then you also look down on us when we want to release it, when we want to ask for, you know, help or just guidance. because when you go to therapy, they don't give you the answers. They just show you the way in different ways. So, and now you want to say that I'm weak because of that, or you don't need that. That's not it either.
Right. So, before we continue, because I said it was just gonna be a half hour, so thank you for staying past your bedtime. But this is really good. This is really good. I think we only got to the what's the first paragraph of a paper? The introduction. Yeah. So, but we are going to do a part 2. We did say that, B, that this is going to be a part 2 because I think, and Nefty, you can just give me 5 seconds of what you think. I don't think people realize that it's okay to bring up a past. I can tell you it was hard for me to bring up a past because I felt guilty for not being grateful for my family. They're like, oh, like, you're not grateful for what we did for you? And I didn't want to sound ungrateful. So that's what I struggle with. I struggle with like not being grateful enough, or I'm not appreciated for everything that they did for us. That's what I struggle with. But at the same time, I can't pretend or overlook or be blind to it because it did affect me, and it's a way of being able to deliver it, still be grateful, and but still bring a change that is needed. And that's where I'm like this. But it's like, who can I talk to when us Mexicans have been kind of raised that way? Like, if you see on social media, you should be thankful for your parents because they did all this for you, the sacrifices and everything. You're like, oh crap, I'm a bad kid. So that's what I struggle with. I'm just sharing that with y'all. But and sometimes, so how I say things, I don't call out people, I call myself out. Because when I call myself out, who's gonna say you shouldn't be calling yourself out like that? Nobody. But so therefore, that's my approach.
And
And
I
I think
also think, oh, sorry, Monique. I also think that that as obviously I can talk from the Latino aspect, but I think that us and the Black community have a lot in common. I think that, I think that this doesn't only affect us. I think it pretty much affects like all the brown and Black people, just people of color. I think immigrant families fall into this. So I don't think it's just like Latinos, because I've also met some like Anglos, let's say, who they're not allowed to show affection. They're not allowed to like celebrate each other. It was like, here's a pat in the back, no hugs, no kisses, and yeah, and you'll be fine. Like, I had an Irish coworker. She said, my dad and my mom never hugged us or never kissed us. I'm like, what? And but and I can't give my kids enough, hugs and kisses, because I don't want them to ever say that, or even if they did, like some of them would be like, and you can tell how uncomfortable they were. That's a hard one to swallow, that you go to hug your mom and your dad, and you can feel and sense the how uncomfortable they are with showing you affection. So then what does that tell you? Like, don't do that. That's not acceptable. And it's just, we don't do it. And that's hard too. So like I said, I just think that we've mentioned the whole Latino thing, but I think that it transcends to more than just that, because I think us, the Latinos and the Black brown community, we have a lot in common when it comes to this.
Yes, and the reason why I stick to Mexican, because I don't want to use the assumption, but you're absolutely right. And as Mexican as I am, that's the only thing I can talk about. But Mo, what were you gonna say before anyone talks smack?
Yeah, I was just gonna say like the part of like not wanting to seem ungrateful. That resonates really well with me, because I remember distinctly like having, conversations with my mom, and she's like, well, like, and I think it's like the justification, but also kind of like downplaying like your own experience. And I think that's something that some families, some parents are not very good at, like validating their kids' feelings. It's like, well, I didn't abuse you. Oh, well, we didn't live in a Roach Motel. And it's like, true. And like, in my ideal world of like things could have been better, you know? And I think that's hard. Especially when I genuinely believe like I really believe like 90% of parents give it all they have, like literally everything they have. And it can still come up short in some ways for their kids. And I think that's hard.
I was gonna say too, do you think like having like the older generation show accountability for kind of I'm not saying what they put us through, but like taking accountability for their actions, like really because I know I have like a lot of conversation with my mom now, and I'm like, I'm 39, I'm finding so much out about my mom. I'm like, my whole life, I'm like, why am I finding it? Make like I understand why she chose some of the decisions she did as a 39-year-old, but it's like, where were you when I was 18? I should have these conversations because maybe I would have, I don't know, just been a different outcome could have been different in certain things. So it's like, but then sometimes I feel like she has a hard time taking accountability for the action.
That's a great question, and I would like for BB to answer that because can you share like why your dad doesn't go to graduations and like that part?
So, like I said, my dad lived outside the country, us growing up, and obviously he didn't go to graduations, he didn't go to anything because he wasn't here, and that was excusable, that was acceptable, and it was like, oh, he's not here because obviously he doesn't live here. And then he came to live in the States, and nothing changed. My sister, my sister graduated from the police academy, and my dad was invited, and he's like, he didn't go. That's a big deal. And I'm like, "Pa, like, why didn't you go?" And he's like, no. We don't go to that stuff. Um, I don't go to that stuff. He said, I don't go to that stuff. He goes, that's an that's an outcome of what you worked hard for. So that's what you get in return. So that's for you to celebrate. He goes, people are needed during their hard times. So my dad does not miss a wake. My dad does not miss a funeral because that's when people need the support the most. So he'll miss your college graduation. He'll miss your, graduation from the academies. He'll miss grandkids, anything and everything because, you worked for that. You should expect that. You shouldn't be like, that's not, like, that's okay. Something to celebrate. People, when there are like, his understanding is when people are down and out, that's when you need to be there for them, not to celebrate them. And I think that, my dad has more kids. So we actually had like a little family meeting with my brothers and all my sisters. And that's one of the things that came up from one of my younger brothers who was raised with my dad in DR. And that's one of the things he called my dad out on. You never went to a graduation. You never went to any of like our school events. You never went to anything. And for me, it was like, oh, you had him there in your household. I was jealous of you guys because he was the only, you guys were the only kids that whoever had him full time. And you're complaining and he missed out on the same things that he did for us when we were, because we were in a different country. So, so obviously the problem is not me or my brothers or my siblings. It's the way my dad views the things and the importance he puts into it. And for him, it's just, that's not important. So that's sad because, we've all questioned ourselves, but he doesn't celebrate that. Like, for him, it's not important.
And Nefty, to answer your question and B, you can, because like we as older folks, and we're pretty much close to the same age, technology did not exist. The only information that people had back then was in their own household or their own community. Like you weren't able to communicate with someone in like Italy right now, and Africa right now, or in Chicago right now, unless it was through the phone. And this is why I say I think this generation won't be able to get away with what we were able to get away with because there's so much information here is that, and once you know you're accountable for it, people back then did not know. And so, and unfortunately, they're going to use what I didn't know. And instead of being willing, you know what, this is a great example. BB saw my dad's behavior when we were in Mexico. I grew up with my dad. I never saw this. And when she saw it and explained it to me, I'm like, holy smokes, that made sense. My dad has a very survivor mentality, meaning that he does things and it gives him a thrill that he gets to fix at the last minute. And that's how my brothers are. And that's how I used to be until I moved away from home. And so when where'd she go? So when when she explained that to me, I was like, I'm 42 and I'm just now seeing it. And yes, that happened because of what happened to my dad as a child, but he chose to keep it as a grown adult. That's a choice. We have the what did I read? TD Jake said, we grow up looking like our parents, but we die looking like our choices. And I was like, first of all, okay, Bishop, but it's true. Like, you can grow up one way, but you die by your choices. So when she saw that, I never saw it like that because I grew up that way. So it's good to have an outside pair of eyes to see. And I was like, wow, how did I? And now I see it in my brother. Now I understand why separation is needed. Like now all this stuff makes sense. And here I am crying. I'm like, why do I have to be separated from my family? Why this and why that? Now all of it's starting to make sense because there's no way I'll be able to elevate still being stuck behind. Does that make sense to anyone? Monique, Bay? I said we were gonna I said we were gonna close out, so any last thoughts before we close out for real?
So when is part 2?
That's BB's in charge, y'all. BB's hit her up. The Lord is using her. I am not going to interfere. Okay. My instruction was we need more conversations. And the assignment, the assignee is BB. And y'all know me, I don't interfere. Okay. So
No. Oh, where did I go? Okay, so I'm going on vacation as of next week, so I'll be back in 2 weeks. So I'll be probably in maybe 3 weeks because I get back on a Saturday. So it'll be it should be on the following Friday that we can do something. So I come back on the 22nd, Des.
so the 28th.
Okay, so it should be, so the end of the month.
Yeah,
So
so
it
the
should be at the end of the
28th.
month.
Yeah, so the 28th.
And that's why we wanted to record this, just, because like that we can kind of touch, kind of go back and reflect. But yeah, we can obviously totally pick up back, then where we're leaving off today.
Yes, and then I'll send you guys the link to this. Yes, Jaleesa, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to
And-
everybody.
Quick question, but I'm sorry, I don't know her name. BD. Can we?
So-
you able to share that PowerPoint? That was very interesting. If you could share it with.
It's in
Yeah.
Spanish though.
Yeah.
Oh, the whole thing.
so-
I seen some English in it. I could.
Yes, I did.
Wait. Can we get a name? Can we find
I'm
it? Can we?
sorry.
Me too. Me too. I mess up her name too.
Just call me Babe.
Bay.
Wait,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, but I can send you the PowerPoint.
Okay.
All right. So
Thank
the
you.
28th, like I said, y'all know I don't interfere. The Lord said I don't interfere. So she said the 28th. We can either make it a Zoom call or in person. I thought this was just as effective. It's up to y'all. So you know what? It's up to her. So I'll let her decide when she comes back from vacation. But put it 28th.
Yeah. So when I come back, when I come back out, we'll make we'll determine if it's going to be in person or if we'll be via Zoom. I don't know. I just hope that this kind of just opens up the lines. I think even if it's just to make you think, it's at the end of the day, it's not us, it's what, we can't do it on our own. We just need to put in the work, and it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to, reach out, because that's the only way we're going to heal our inner child. And I think that it's important for our inner child to know that he is safe with who we are today. And I think it's, important for our inner child to know that we are no longer on survival mode.
So thank you everyone for joining the table talk. Pastor Bay, do you want to close us out in prayer?
Please.
And I want to say hi before she's been writing all these notes. Please let me say hi. Please let me say hi. So just 2 seconds. Do you want to pray us out? Say hi. All right. Thank you, Father God, for such time as this, Father, because sometimes we just need to hear our stories, because in our stories, we understand each other a little better, and it gives us perspective. May you take control of everything that we do, Lord, because at the end of the day, it is to change us, to change our inner selves, Lord, that we can understand, Lord, where you want us to be, Lord, and understand our assignments, Father God. May you bring us closer in a way that we can share our stories in a safe place, that we can be, Father God, for each other, maybe just that person that they need to just hear them out, and that you take the glory always, in Jesus' name. Amen.
See you guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.